Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk, Israel National Radio. Today, it's the second day of the month of Adar Sheni, the second Adar, 5774. Can you feel it? Can you feel the joy of Adar sinking in? Well, if you don't, that might be because it's also the 4th of March, 2014. And this week, a new beginning, Parshat Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And now it really starts to get very interesting as the Jewish people begin to encounter the heart of the Torah, the centerpiece of the Torah, the book of Vayikra, the manual of the Beit HaMikdash.
The thing itself.
The thing itself,
Now
not
it's
ideas
just-
about the thing.
Right. Now it's not just-
Yitzchak, who is more well-read than me, is paraphrasing one of my favorite poets, Wallace Stevens.
More well-read than you, Rabbi? That is ridiculous. I only know that quote because of you.
Last week, we were reporting about the discussion that was scheduled to take place in the Knesset last Tuesday. And since then, whole worlds have gone by in progression, and we haven't been back on Temple Talk. So now, just momentarily, let us summarize last week's discussion in the Knesset. Well, what can we say? First of all, it's important that it took place. It was historic, and really kudos to Member of Knesset and Deputy Speaker Moshe Feiglin for bringing the matter to the Knesset agenda. Was it a productive, destiny-charged meeting? No, I don't really think so.
I think the after effects and the shock waves were much more impressive and noteworthy than the actual
and somewhat
disproportionate.
Somewhat disproportionate. First of all, it was quite an experience to be there, to be in the Knesset session, and that's a story in itself. The rules of how the spectators have to carry themselves with the ultimate decorum and respect.
The rules
for
that they
those
don't brief you on before you
august
go in, but
lawmakers
then
on the other side of the glass that treat each other with incredible disrespect and contempt. But the ones that are watching them, they're not allowed to like cross their legs or hold a drink in their hand or anything. They have to have rapt, undivided attention on the saga that is unfolding in front of them, the process of the making of law in the state of Israel. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is, there were a number of Knesset members that spoke. A member of Knesset Feiglin opened the discussion, and then there was some very rousing oratory by people like Miri Regev.
Mm-hmm.
Some other people spoke very beautifully as well. Everyone spoke, of course, according to their commitments, according to their belief.
Or to their lack of commitment, as in some on the left who wholeheartedly endorsed the fact that Jews have rights to pray in the Temple, but of course forbidden to actually fulfill those rights because we don't want to start a war.
Moshe Feiglin spoke, Tzipi Chotobeli, Miri Regev, Yariv Levin, Shimon Ochayon, Shuli Mualam, Orit Struk, Zvulun Kalfa. These are all people that spoke in favor of the concept of implementing.
Where were all the other ones who
Israeli sovereignty? This is a
go
problem.
to the Temple Mount or should have been there or have expressed support or should be expressing support?
I actually was extremely agitated about that. There are other members of the Knesset that are part of this lobby of championing the rights of Jews to pray on the Temple Mount, and they were conspicuously absent. Now, what we also heard at that discussion, we heard some of the sorry, pathetic, ridiculous, embarrassing, self-immolating, lobotomized, self-hating positions of some of the members of the Israeli left, who characteristically and patently spoke according to the pattern of that ilk, which is basically, this is what they always say. This is what the left in Israel always says. They say, you know what? We, the left, the self-hating Jews, we are the ultimate Zionists. And you're not going to tell us that you love the land of Israel more than us. And the fact is, that's why we want there to be a two-state solution. because it's the only way to uphold the Jewish state, is we have to have a two-state solution. So for them...
And if you want to pray in a Temple Mount, you're not Jewish and you're an anti-Zionist, and it's totally...
So for them, the ultimate, evolution of Zionism is that it implodes in of itself, it collapses, and it becomes the state of Palestine. But in any event...
Jewish ghetto.
So there they are saying, no, you're not telling us that you love the state of Israel. You actually want to destroy the state of Israel, and you're not really interested in going up to the Temple Mount to pray. All you're interested in is destroying the fragile peace. And there were members of Knesset who stood up and said, how could you be talking this way? You're gonna cause us to be destroyed. Don't you know that this is a keg of dynamite? How could you be talking like this? This is horrible. What's wrong with you people? You're so irresponsible. This is, of course, we're in favor of the rights of Jewish people to pray on the Temple Mount, but not for you. We don't really need to do it. We just enshrine the idea, like we ensconce it. We like hold it under glass. It's like a beautiful concept. Like we believe in these things, but not really. Something like that. In any event,
well put.
There was no conclusion. There wasn't even a date that was given for its continuation.
But apparently, there's a new subcommittee has been formed by Feiglin now that will continue the discussion. And also, apparently, it was he had agreed with Netanyahu ahead of time that there would not be brought to a vote. Because Netanyahu was extremely sensitive about the whole thing because he receives his orders from another. What can I say?
We're going to be talking about
another figure in the Middle East, and we'll be talking about
a figure he later. Is. A figure he is.
Like a character in a plot.
Yitzchak, hold on. Yitzchak and I have discovered something that you might already know, listeners, but it's really amazing. But anyway, the point is, we were there. It was quite exciting, quite historic. We laud, extol, appreciate, and hold in high esteem those members of the Knesset who have the audacity, the holy audacity, and the moxie to stand up in front of everyone and say, you know what, there ought to be a law. We have to pass a law. Not only that Jewish people have the right to pray on the Temple Mount, but we should be thinking about building the Holy Temple. What's wrong with you people? And they said that. It was very, very beautiful. It really was. Miri Regev from the Likud stood and shouted in front of everyone in the Knesset that was there, which it wasn't that many people, of course, that we should be screaming Shema Yisrael in the Temple Mount. It was really quite beautiful. But apparently there had been an agreement that there wouldn't be a conclusion because they couldn't agree. Netanyahu and Feiglin could not agree on a proper statement that could be issued. And generally, after a discussion like this, a statement is issued, but they couldn't agree on the wording because Netanyahu, as Yitzchak just explained, is extremely sensitive about these things. And in fact, in point of fact, and here's what we have to say. The very next day, okay, because as Yitzchak had said, like, the meeting itself was quite lukewarm. I mean, there were a few people there screaming at each other, which happens every day in the Knesset. All right? But the reaction, that was like way disproportionate. The reaction in Israel, the reaction in the Arab world to the fact that Knesset Yisrael could actually be discussing the fact that there's something wrong with this picture because we've never implemented Israeli sovereignty on the Temple Mount. So the very next day, there were all sorts of reactions. And I want to begin with the reaction of our prime minister. And the statement that the prime minister's office issued the very next day was, and I quote, "Israel will not change the status quo on the Temple Mount." So, and the byline of that article from the next day was, Netanyahu's office clarifies that to the government has no intention of changing policy as the Knesset debate riles the Arab world. So, and the article continues on saying how the Knesset debate triggered angry political reactions in the Arab world. So listen to this. Here's the statement by Netanyahu spokesman Mark Regev. The policy of the government of Israel has been and continues to be the maintenance of the status quo at the Temple Mount, including freedom of access for all faiths to the holy sites. The government has no intention of changing this policy. So this is so, I mean, the article continues and it's quite long, but this is amazing because who is anybody listening to this? Like, what planet are we on? Ooh, that's also a theme that we're going to be discussing in this edition of Temple.
What galaxy, as a matter of fact.
Yes, what galaxy is more proper. And you won't believe what we have to tell you about galaxies in this incredible edition of Temple Talk. But the point is, what is this? How do I understand this? The next day, Netanyahu says, no matter what you think that you're going to pull there in the Knesset, we are not changing the status quo of the Temple Mount. And what is that status quo, he explained? Freedom of access for all faiths to the holy sites. So they just keep saying this meaningless drivel, and either we are not supposed to be insulted because we're supposed to understand that that Jews don't count even in the state of Israel for anything, and that we have no rights, or we're supposed to be, I guess, remarkably unintelligent, and it's just understood that this is going to go over our heads. In any event, what happened was the Arab League representatives met in what was called an extraordinary meeting in Cairo the day after this meeting, and they discussed it. And they were talking about Israel's violations of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that they've exceeded all marks, and about how the Jewish extremists continue to storm the holy site, like I did this morning, by the way. I stormed the Al-Aqsa again this morning, because you see, every time Jewish people visit the Temple Mount, their pictures within an hour appear on all sorts of radical Islamic websites under the caption, "Settlers stormed Al-Aqsa." So I turned to the couple that I took to the Temple Mount this morning, a nice Jewish couple from the Five Towns from Long Island, and I said to them, I just want you to know, because I saw them taking pictures of us, I said, I just want you to know that soon your picture is going to be up on these Palestinian websites, and you're going to be described as settlers that are storming Al-Aqsa. Anyway, so the article talks about this Arab League initiative, but in Amman, what happened in Jordan as a result of the extraordinary historic discussion that took place in the Knesset, which again is only historic and extraordinary because it took place, and we bless the fact that it did take place because it is a beginning. But this temple talk, I have to tell you, is dedicated with great affection to King Abdullah of Jordan. And soon you'll see why. And we're going to be focusing in this edition of Temple Talk on King Abdullah of Jordan. Because Yitzhak and I feel that on a soul level, we've acquired a new intimacy, bond, understanding of this boy king. And I do mean boy king. And so we have an empathy towards Abdullah, King of Jordan, who de facto runs the Temple Mount. So I continue in this article. In Amman, the Jordanian parliament passed a non-binding resolution on Wednesday to expel Israeli Ambassador Daniel Nevo and recall its own representative to Israel in response to the debate that took place in the Knesset. Can you imagine? They were so upset about the fact that Israel actually discussed this, that 47 members of the Jordanian parliament actually called for the nullification of the 1994 peace accord between Israel and Jordan. So the idea is this. Finally, the Knesset began to discuss the irony of the fact that we allow a foreign power to dictate policy at the only holy place for the Jewish people, if you'd like to call it the holiest place, but it is actually the only holy place for the Jewish people in the world, in the heart of the undivided capital of Israel, the city of Jerusalem. And that foreign element, of course, is Jordan, officially called the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, which, by the way, hasn't been here for 1,000 years, but is actually, it emerged from post-World War I division of West Asia by Britain and France. It's a very, very interesting history how in 1946 Jordan became an independent sovereign state, officially known as the Hashemite Kingdom of Transjordan. It's a very, very interesting...
The Hashemite family isn't even from Jordan.
Right. I want to talk about that now. It's called the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Hashemites is... traditionally refers to those belonging to the Banu Hashim, or clan of Hashim tribe. It's an Arabian clan within the larger Quraysh tribe, and it's really interesting. You can read about it, of course, especially in Wikipedia, a whole story about the history of the Hashemite Kingdom. And I want to tell you that one of the guests on our upcoming 5th annual Temple Mount Awareness Day broadcast, which is coming up soon, at the end of this month. It's on Sunday, March 30th, which happens to be the 28th day of the month of Adar. And we're going to have the broadcast times posted on templeinstitute.org very, very soon. And it will be at a time convenient for you. One of the special guests that we're interviewing this year is Professor Gavriel Barkai, who is a renowned archaeologist. and an expert in the artifacts of the Temple Mount, and in fact an expert on the destruction of the antiquities by the Waqf of the Temple Mount. And off camera and off mic, before we began recording, Professor Barakai, whom my children have known for many years because of their work at the Temple Mount Sifting Project, and he was just such a lovely guest and so informative. He told me some things when we were getting ready to go on our interview, and he told me, for example, that the Hashemite dynasty of the Hussein family, they are considered to be direct descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And this is something that is considered to be a factual thing in the Arab world, mm-hmm. and therefore they're given a certain amount of respect and honor, and that the entire connection that Jordan has to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and to the concept, which is alluded to, as I read last week in the 1994 Accords with Jordan, the concept of this special custodial role in the holy places, it's only because of their lineage to Muhammad, but not that the Kingdom of Jordan itself or the country of Jordan has any connection whatsoever to these things. It's only this particular family is considered to be the custodians of Muslim holy places. And why is all of this very, very interesting? Because the Hashemites of Jordan, who are the de facto rulers of the Temple Mount, and I'm just being right out in the open with that now with you people. I'm not talking about how, Harabai bi'adenu, da-da-da-da-da, and Israel is sovereign on the Temple Mount. I wish we were sovereign, and we're trying to be sovereign, and we're trying to prove that we're sovereign, and we're trying to conquer it, but the fact is Jordan seems to be running it. But you know what? The interesting thing is that the more that you study about the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the family of King Hussein, the more you realize that they are a vast minority in their own country. Mm-hmm. In fact,
the vast majority is
the vast majority are Palestinians.
It's about 70%.
And
75.
Look up the concept of what's called Black September in Jordan, and you can read about the whole historic division of Transjordan and the beginning of the Hashemite Kingdom, and then you read about the Jordanian Civil War, and you read about how basically the PLO's stronghold was Jordan, mm-hmm. and the country of Jordan, the army of Jordan, forced the PLO out of Jordan and killed thousands into Lebanon.
Israel supported Jordan in that.
It was unbelievable, and because Jordan found themselves to be, as they still are today, ruling as a minority over a majority which is many times over their amount mm-hmm. of Palestinians. And so when you hear the phrase repeated over and over again by the good guys that Jordan is Palestine, there's a reason why we're saying that. It's because that's actually where Palestinians come from.
If it became a democratic country, it would have to be Palestinian. And this is what terrifies King Abdullah, and this is what terrifies also the PLO, because they really don't want a state in Jordan, and they don't want a state in west of the Jordan River in Israel. They just want the destruction of Israel.
And again, why are we doing this now in Temple Talk? Why are we talking so much about Jordan? First of all, because I think it behooves you, dear listeners, to understand a little bit about King Abdullah of Jordan and about the history of Jordan, since the Jordanian Waqf, at the behest of this boy king, and yes, again, I'll tell you in a minute why I'm saying that, boy king, is basically administering the Temple Mount and the deal between Netanyahu and Abdullah, where Abdullah says jump and Bibi says how high, and Abdullah says I don't want to see any Jews on the Temple Mount on such and such a day, and Bibi says yes sir, no sir, and takes care of all of that, and Jordan is running the Temple Mount. I think it's important for you to understand a little bit about this issue. So there was a civil war, the Jordanian Civil War, that began in September 1970 and ended in July 1971, and before that ended, you saw the expulsion of the PLO leadership, and thousands of Palestinian fighters were killed, and the remainder were expelled to Lebanon. But do you know that I think it is said that the numbers were really amazing, the numbers of how many were killed, ranging from figures of estimates of thousands to estimates of tens of thousands of Palestinians that were killed
in a very short period of time.
In a very short period of time, of like less than a year, by the Jordanian monarchy, and that is referred to as Black September. Why is all of this so incredibly interesting? I don't want to run out of time here. I have to pace myself, Yitzchak. This is so important. You see, Hashem is so good to us. That's Hashem, not Hashemite. Hashem, He understands our heart, that we're trying so hard to comprehend what's going on here, to really be able to comprehend the situation of the facts on the ground of the Temple Mount. And again, thankfully, recently, things are becoming more and more clear as to the dynamics of what's going on. And we are making every effort, and there are those that are in positions of power that are really trying to bring this to the forefront of our consciousness as a people. But the fact is, I say Hashem is so good because He led me to discover something this week, which, again, it might be common knowledge, but sometimes you can have a moment of epiphany when all of a sudden the universe just is in perfect alignment. And all of a sudden everything makes perfect sense. I never understood the dynamics of the relationship between Netanyahu and Abdullah and who's on first and what's going on with the Temple Mount. I never understood it until today. And today I feel like a bell who has been struck. The tongue in the bell is clanging. Suddenly everything makes perfect sense to me because I was only missing one part of this puzzle. But Hashem, who's so good, led me to discover in a very innocent way. It just happened to come to me, this discovery, and now everything makes sense of the whole idea of what's really going on the Temple Mount. It makes sense to me now, and we're just about to end this half, so I'm going to have to leave you on a cliffhanger. When we come back, we need to share with you some very dramatic information about the boy king Abdullah of Jordan and his intimate relationship with the Temple Mount. And this revelation, I think, will change your life, change your world. It might even change your galaxy. And it certainly will help you to align yourself with the universe, at which the Temple Mount and the Holy Temple is in the very center. So stay with us for the most incredible revelation. Temple Talk, Israel National Radio.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk, Israel National Radio, UniversalTorah.com, Temple Institute's YouTube channel. Today, the second day of the second Adar, 5774. It is the 4th of March, 2014. And I don't know about anybody else, Rabbi, but I am sitting at the edge of my universe, waiting for this revelation that you're about to lay upon us. Rabbi, are you there? Will somebody please beam up the rabbi?
Where's my microphone?
Where's the rabbi's microphone? Oh my gosh. Give me my microphone.
I couldn't find my microphone.
Whoa.
Here's what we are so excited about. Make a long story short. Just wait on that for a second, Yitzchak. For those of you who are Star Trek fans, and Yitzchak and I were discussing this in great detail. We've never particularly, either of us, been fans of the science fiction genre. But for those of you who are Star Trek fans, you might be familiar with Star Trek Voyager, which of course is a science fiction television series set in the Star Trek universe. Just a little background on the show, of course, is initially set on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy, 75,000 light years from Earth during the 2370s. The setting migrates across that distance over the course of the show's run as they make their way back towards Earth.
These facts are important for what the rabbi's about to say.
It follows the adventures of the Starfleet vessel USS Voyager, which became stranded in the Delta Quadrant while pursuing a renegade Maquis ship. Both ships' crews merge aboard Voyager to make the estimated 75-year journey home. The point is that in this television series, which ran for 172 episodes, there is a particular episode that actually is the 36th episode of this American science fiction television series, Star Trek Voyager, and the 36th episode is called Investigations. Investigations, well, the initial original air date of this program was March 13th, 1996. And there is a 6-second cameo appearance in that television show of then Crown Prince Abdullah of Jordan.
Whoa.
The man who would be king is a huge fan of the Star Trek franchise. I'm reading now from the Internet Movie Database description of this episode. Prince Abdullah insisted to the producers to let him appear in at least one episode. He is seen playing a crew member in the Sciences Division in an early scene standing before Ensign Harry Kim just before Neelix appears to talk to Kim. Because he is not a member of the Screen Actors Guild, he was not allowed to speak.
Which is too bad, because he speaks perfect English, and much better than his Arabic, which is apparently very, very, very faulty.
This is absolutely so amazing. If you go to YouTube,
you can find
you might know this. You might already have made peace with this. You might already, this might not be dropping a huge ball in your universe, in your galaxy, but I didn't know that Abdullah, King of Jordan, plays a cameo role in Star Trek because he is such a Star Trek fan.
In fact,
this boy king.
In fact, he has invested millions of his own money in a Star Trek theme park in Aqaba, in Jordan. Aqaba is on the other side of the Red Sea from Eilat.
Which apparently is due to open already this year.
Yeah.
So
don't want to miss that.
All you have to do, dear listeners of Temple Talk, all you have to do is go to YouTube and just type in the words King Abdullah Star Trek. And you will see the scene in which King Abdullah standing there so starstruck, if you'll excuse me, standing there so excited to be next to, what was his name? Ensign Harry Kim. Is actually just standing there for a minute, just nodding, and then he leaves the screen.
If you go to the Google Images, you'll also see pictures of King Abdullah making the special Star Trek, what was it, Spock? I think Spock had this special gesture with his
Yes, he
fingers,
made a special
actually
gesture.
Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock originally, Nimoy was Jewish, and you can also look him up on the internet, and he explains that he got that hand gesture from the actual hand gesture of the Kohanim, of the priests, when they give the priestly blessing, Birkat Kohanim, the Jews in the synagogue. So
this is
you
so
can see King Abdullah
amazing,
doing his best to imitate a Kohen.
We had no idea that King Abdullah was so
infatuated
with Star Trek that not only did he beg, it must have been like a royal tantrum, or maybe, as someone commented on YouTube, maybe Daddy pulled some strings or something like that, or maybe it was the price of American support. Who knows? He actually got to be on a Star Trek episode. And yes, once you really get into that and start investigating that world, then you find pictures of King Abdullah holding up his hands, as did the priests, the lineal descendants of Aaron in the Beit HaMikdash, holding up their hands, making the sign of the tetragrammaton on their hands for the Shechina to rest on them as they gave the priestly blessing, which, yes, if you also Google that or YouTube that, Leonard Nimoy, in a very moving interview, actually explained that he took that from his childhood memories of going to the synagogue with his grandfather and looking at the priest do the priestly blessing. My point, you may be wondering, what is this all about? It just hit me that the man who is basically our strategic ally here, who is one of the only 2 Arab countries that signed a peace accord with us, and who, de facto, we have given over complete dominion over the Temple Mount, is basically living out his fantasies. He is, I see it so clearly, he is living in his fantasy world.
He's in his own galaxy.
He's in his own galaxy. Do you understand? This is the person who sets policy of whether or not the Jewish people are allowed to move their lips, and who decided that any Jewish presence on the Temple Mount is an affront to the God of Islam.
Maybe because he wasn't allowed to say any words on that episode. It was probably some Jewish Hollywood type who told him he couldn't do it.
How absolutely amazing. I mean, do you find that Bibi Netanyahu is in some sort of cameo appearance in a popular American television program? Is Obama, did he ever have a cameo in a popular American television program?
Shows. He doesn't need to do that cameo
I know that Netanyahu right now is in Washington, and the reports are that he's going to have a very tough meeting with Obama, who is going to be bringing great pressure against him to accept the framework of the Kerry plan. And both Secretary of State, well, I tried not to do that, but it's hard not to, and Netanyahu are going to be speaking before AIPAC, and they're each going to be giving their own fantastical science fiction-like reality check of what they think is going on in this region. Of course, Obama has already proven himself to be a real tremendous expert in foreign policy. You can see that with what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, but the fact is, every day that goes by, the Jewish people are more and more committed to the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, committed to redeeming the Temple Mount, and to implementing sovereignty there. That's what's going on here. It's a life and death struggle over the heart and soul of the Jewish people and the fate of the world. And in this equation of this incredible magnitude, one of the players is Abdullah, King of Jordan, who
he's a Trekkie.
Is a Trekkie.
He's a nerd.
And basically,
he's a little twerp.
I don't want to say that about all of our fans and all of our listeners that may indeed be Star Trek enthusiasts.
But he is.
But he really is. He really is. Go look at that. Go look at that scene on YouTube of how glad he is just to be able to be there in Star Trek regalia and uniform, and to have his 6 seconds on that episode, and then put yourself in my place.
And I did notice,
and then put yourself in my place and say, what? Has Rabbi Richmond lost it completely? Why is he spending 3/4 of this temple talk leading up to and discussing the fact that once upon a time, inconsequentially, Abdullah, when he was only Crown Prince, played in Star Trek? I'm saying, you know why? Because now, all of a sudden, I'm sorry, I was on the Temple Mount this morning, and I had my confrontation with the Jordanian Waqf, and I cannot tell you more about that. I told Yitzchak. But the fact is, now I understand everything, because this is his world. He is living in a world of fiction, of science fiction, and that is, it explains everything to me about what is really going on the Temple Mount today.
And if you are a Star Trek fan and you have a good high-resolution image of Abdullah on that episode, please send it to us, because apparently he's had all these images, or most of them, removed from the various websites, because if you go to Google Images, you'll see images there, but when you click on them to get to the website, they have been mysteriously removed. Rabbi, I'd like to bring us back down to earth for a minute, if I may. This past week, in response to all this noise and sound and fury concerning the Knesset meeting, discussion, debate, the Jerusalem Post actually printed a very, very nice, positive, sane editorial, which we've posted on our Facebook page. And today I happened to be looking in the print edition of the Jerusalem Post, and I saw this letter to the editor in which this person makes reference to the editorial itself. So I'd like to read this, because I just think this is a voice of sanity, and a voice of a reality in this world of fantasy and science fiction. It goes like this. Sir, you state in the Temple Mount editorial of February 28th that, quote, the controversy surrounding the Temple Mount is just one of many obstacles that need to be overcome, end quote. Totally wrong. The real obstacle is the unbelievable lack of spine in our political leaders, no matter what party. Jewish pride, courage, and determination are absolutely absent from their thoughts and deeds. Their ignoble behavior has served to mislead our people, converting them into a herd incapable of properly reacting to nonsensical statements and actions. A short list would do: the flight from South Lebanon, the retreat from Gaza, the non-completion of Operation Cast Lead, the Second Lebanon War, and the ongoing release of convicted murderers in exchange for, well, absolutely nothing. You don't have to be a grade A strategist to recognize that Jerusalem is, quote, a pain in the neck, end quote, from a military point of view. But this should not have any bearing on a Jew's thinking or doing when it comes to the city itself, of which the Temple Mount is the heart. For me, an atheist, there is no room for religious sentiments when dealing with the Temple Mount, but it is the symbol of Jewish statehood and our roots in the land of Israel. By handing over the keys to the Waqf Muslim Religious Trust, Moshe Dayan believed the whole Zionist doctrine, Moshe Dayan belied the whole Zionist doctrine and tacitly said to the Muslims that the Temple Mount and the land do not belong to us. The present unacceptable situation has been created by our own doing and not doing. To amend this, two things are needed: a new, really Jewish leader and a miraculous medicine capable of pulling us out of our slumber.
Beautiful.
End of letter.
Absolutely beautiful.
You know, it's not rocket science, people. And, you know, anyone this side of Galaxy 9 or wherever Abdullah, you know, got to spend his 3 seconds of glory on the Starship Enterprise can see what's going on here.
You know, there's so much happening in this region of the world with Syria and Iran and Egypt and all the deaths that are being reported in Syria. And yet Obama calls Israeli construction in the settlements aggressive, and he says that this is the whole problem. And now the conventional wisdom is that Netanyahu is going to have a very difficult meeting with President Obama in Washington because, and I quote, as he recently told the New York Times, the president wouldn't want to run any risk that it was the lack of his involvement that would make the difference between success and failure. So he's going to be trying very hard.
He's getting involved.
Yes, he's going to be trying very hard to see to it that Israel accepts the framework that was established by the Secretary of State, which of course most of us still are not completely aware of any of those details because we're not allowed to know, because this is all done behind closed doors. It's kind of like Bilam, speaking of the word carry. It's kind of like this is not something that we're not supposed to know. It's something which is dark and impure. And if we would know, then we would be able to complain and we would be able to protest. So there's something going on, and we already know enough of it. We already have a clear understanding of what's at stake as far as the land of Israel, as far as the settlement enterprise, as far as Jewish communities, Jewish homes, the state of Jerusalem as it being the capital of Israel, the state of the Temple Mount. And again, it's up to, just as you read, it's up to a Jewish leadership to be able to arise and show some sort of pride and determination to be able to stand up for that which is holy and imperative and integral to our people's survival. And that's exactly what we're waiting for. And here we are in the month of Adar, still no rain to speak of, and the center of everything now is the revelation of the story of Purim, the story of Hashem's constant direct involvement, his behind-the-scenes providence over every detail of our lives. And of course, the center of the stage of the story of Purim is the rebuilding of the Holy Temple. And small wonder that now, this week, we begin to read the book of Vayikra, which is the Torah's showcase of what happens in the Holy Temple. And here again, Yitzchak, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have a lot of excuses, a lot of problems, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of personal distancing themselves from the subject matter of the book of Vayikra, which I know you and I, for the past few years, every year that goes by, we become more and more enamored and more personally involved with the tremendous life-altering lessons of what is going on a daily level in the Holy Temple. And as we pointed out in the past, it all begins with this incredible verse. He called to Moshe, Vayikra, El Moshe, Vayidaber Hashem elav me'ol moed lemor. And Hashem spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, and how it's broken up from, he called to Moshe, and Hashem spoke to him. So what did he call to him? What did he say? And the incredible attention that our sages pay to this phrase, that there was some sort of special message that only Moshe was able to hear. And that in order to be able to hear that, you have to be on a certain level of connection. And how that is the level of the sweet and innocent young children of Israel, who haven't yet been told what they can believe and what they can't believe, and what's fanciful and what's science fiction and what's real, because they are pure. And that's why traditionally Jewish children begin their career of Torah study at a very young age, not from Genesis, but from Vayikra.
And I would like to add that Vayikra, and he called to, the Aleph, of course, the last letter of Vayikra, is written in a Sefer Torah, on a Torah scroll, very small. And so, of course, there's much commentary about that. But I would just like to say that Aleph, which is numerically number 1, and also the first letter of the word Ani, which is me, I, and I am always number 1, because I is the ego, that for Moshe to hear that special message, that same message that the innocent children hear, he had to diminish his own ego. And I think that is really the key to anybody who wants to hear the message of Vayikra, is to lose the ego, lose, your set of modern, Western, 21st century values that shuts your eyes, to and your heart to a true Torah message for thousands of years. Lose all the garbage and debris that you hear out in the streets today and in media, and just focus on what's being told in Vayikra, and you will come out of it a changed person.
And what is it that's being told in Vayikra? In this parsha, for example, we begin to learn about the rules of the offerings, the types of offerings that are in the temple. We begin to understand that there is a vast universe, again, the galaxy theme of this temple talk, that we are part of. Did you play that song? Did you play that song?
Yeah, the theme song from that particular Voyager series?
Right.
Would you like to hear that?
I think so.
Okay, it's only a few seconds.
So King Hussein is off wandering.
King Abdullah.
Right. I'm sorry. King Abdullah is off wandering on the USS Voyager, USSS Voyager, to that tune.
Wasn't it the Enterprise? Or
No, I think this was about the Voyager.
Oh,
Again, I'm not an expert. And he was wearing his uniform, and he was very excited. And that's about that, and that's that music. But now we have a different music, the music of the book of Vayikra, of the real world, of what's and as the one who is wearing the pajamas on Star Trek, on that episode of Investigation, to that music, he's now in charge of the Temple Mount. But what goes on the Temple Mount is a total sacrilege of the name of God. It's a total den of iniquity and thievery and terror. The place that Hashem promises through every prophet of Israel will be the center of world peace and understanding. Right? So that place, from there goes forth the most venomous and vile hate of the Jewish people from our holiest place. And while I was reading further about King Abdullah, about all of his work for interfaith understanding and religious tolerance and religious freedom, except again when it comes to the Jewish people, for Vulcans and all those other races that are featured in Star Trek. But again, the book of Vayikra is the opposite. The book of Vayikra is that it's basically calling out to us. You know what that call is? The call of he called to Moshe, that small aleph that you mentioned, that subtle message that's being broadcast at the end of this, at the beginning of this middle book of the Torah. There's a message that the little children can hear. It's a sensitive message. It's the message of our relationship with life around us, our place in the food chain, and who man is as opposite the animals, and why we have to elevate ourselves and make a firm and positive statement through these offerings that we are men. That voice, what it's really broadcasting is this idea that now becomes, from this point on, dominant in the whole Torah and in the whole history of Israel. Our mission forever is to remind the world that a human being has to be a man and not an animal. And that's exactly what this is all about. It's about this calling that we have to rise up above our base, mundane, and lowly instinct, and to show that we are human beings. And that's what the service in the Holy Temple is geared towards. It's a world of understanding. We would need, and we always say this, there's so much to study, there's so much to catch up on, there's so much to connect ourselves with that which has been lost, the world of what goes on in the Holy Temple, and how a person that might be have gotten down to the lowest level of what a person can stoop to, how that person can come to that place of holiness and reconnect with the divine spark within himself and be able to elevate himself back up to be striving for a connection to God in this world. That's what happens in the Holy Temple.
Here's the music, Rabbi. I was about to add something to what you said. Here's the music. It's been a whirlwind. I feel like I've been around the universe and back this temple talk. So, brave new world for us here on earth in reality land. The Holy Temple, Vayikra, month of Adar, Purim coming up, and for those Trekkie fans of the stature of King Abdullah, whole other place altogether. Thanks for being with us. Temple Talk.